Githaiga. Who is Grace Githaiga? I think Grace Githaiga is a convener currently of the Kenya ICT Action Network, a multi-stakeholder, actually now we moved into think tank, a multi-stakeholder think tank that brings together different stakeholders interested in ICT policy and regulation. And, so we are constantly, we do that work through thought leadership, and that comes through, we have several pillars, 4 pillars. So one is that it's through research. So we are consistently looking at what are the key policy, ICT policy issues, and what sort of policy do they require, what requires policy attention. So we do that through research. Once we have evidence, then we use that to advocate for the changes that we would require or we would want in the policies and in the laws. And most important, what we do is that because we believe that all these laws must have a public interest in whatever it is that they do, there needs to be a balance. We support regulation, and but we also realize that regulation must be balanced with, freedoms of people as espoused in the Kenya Constitution. Once we do that, then we have another pillar, which is capacity building. And in that, we run the Kenya School of Internet Governance once a year. Then we have different capacity building sessions in digital security, but also our capacity building is multi-pronged because we also run like a mentorship program where I am very key in identifying, like once we train people in our trainings, you always get a few people who are very interested in what you're doing and who would want to continue doing that. So, we consistently identify those and we work with them. So, we identify their areas. Are you interested in research? What is it that you're interested in? And then we provide that platform. And I must say, I think I'm very proud that I actually started that mentoring young people because they've gone on to do phenomenal stuff. They've gone on to be hired by, by giant, tech giant companies. You're talking of Google, you're talking of Safaricom. And so I am very happy to see that work. So who is Grace? Grace provides that leadership at KICTANet. Grace forges partnerships, like we already have, working partnerships with PIN, with many other organizations, like CPESA, we work very closely with EDET. I think, we work very closely with APC. And so just making sure that those relationships are maintained and that we have a very good working and collaborative relationship. Those are some of the things that I do. And then, Grace Githaiga is a mother of 2 children and a sibling to a brother, I have a brother and a sister. And what else? And I am a friend to many people. Yeah.
Yes, Grace is a friend to many people. Okay, including me, I hope. So, when you started talking about KICTANet at the beginning, I was getting a bit worried, like Grace is taking this conversation to the keynote angle again, but I am going to pull her back. So I was glad to hear, the way you ended that. Now, let me rewind time a bit. You've been around for a while, Grace. Yes. Let's rewind time. Yes. Not the beginning, but when do you think that you caught what many people refer to as the big break? That moment when things would have just continued, you would just have been, maybe working somewhere, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and going home and saying, well, we'll resume again tomorrow. But suddenly it changed to you, Grace, the sector leader. Grace, we see on TV, we hear, we read what she's writing and things like that. What do you think was responsible for that? Is there like a trigger
Oh dear.
How was your starting out? How did it start happen?
Yeah, actually, the ICT, like the ICT sector, I actually found myself. It was by default. I must say by default, because, like you say, I worked. I was in broadcasting. I worked in broadcasting, I think, for 10 years. And I had gotten to a point where I was feeling I have no fresh ideas. I have nothing else to add. And I do remember that, the country was going through review of how laws are going to align with convergence. And so I remember I had been pushing for certain laws in broadcasting. And I was very critical in this country to see that laws also catered for community broadcasting, because then I was, I was chairing the sector, not just in Kenya, but in Africa. Then, I was also balancing. I was saying you need to define the community sector. These are the rights they need to enjoy, because they can't compete with with the commercial sector. And then I was also saying the public broadcaster also needs to do 1, 2, 3. And so when we were called to a stakeholders meeting, then the previous permanent secretary, Bitange Ndemo, had just taken over leadership, and he was, he really embraced public participation. But also we had gone through a process as a country where now we had a new constitution that espouses public participation in Article 10, where anyone making public policy must engage and involve the stakeholders. And so, we went for that meeting. And I remember the then head of the National Communication Secretariat walking up to me and, Gbenga, are you there? Okay. Yeah. Walking up to me and telling me, you know what, Grace, you need, you are the winner in this, the regulations. Everything you have been pushing for, you have been fighting for, has been taken on board. So I think you need to retire. And I was much younger. Not even anywhere near retirement age. But that actually woke me up. And I thought, okay, retire. No, I can't retire, because I still have a lot of energy. I'm not even near retirement age. But at that point, it got me thinking. And I thought, actually, I have done my bit in broadcasting. What next? And so I sent out feelers. KICTANet had been formed, people had started gathering, and, I would be called to explain issues of convergence and broadcasting. And so I remember Alice Monyo was then the convener. And I remember just making a call and telling her, hey, by the way, I am around. If there's stuff you need to be assisted with, or you think I can do, I am here. And at the same time, I had come back from the US, where I was a Fulbright fellow. And so, I had also started, new thinking, what do I want to do after this? And so I was at a point where in my life, I just felt I was at a crossroad. And so at that point, then KICTANet was undertaking a study looking at the dark side of ICTs and how it affects women. And so they didn't have a research at that time. So Alice told me, just come on board. And I went, I was very active. I started learning. And I think I became a very good learner, because within that time frame, KICTANet decided to send me to a meeting in South Africa to, the freedom of expression rapporteur, then Frank LaRue, was compiling his position to UNGA, and he needed people who would help him with what are the issues in freedom of expression online. And so I went there, and I remember being told to make a presentation on intermediary liability, and I wondered what that was. I tried asking people around, nobody understood what was. Until I met one stalwart in the industry. His name is Muriuki Mureithi, and he said, "Come buy me tea." I explained, and he explained to me the issues in vernacular, in my Kikuyu language. And out of that meeting, by the time we parted ways, I was very clear, and I thought, I am a researcher. How can I not do that? So I did a very good paper. And in fact, I remember meeting some media people in South Africa, and they were asking me, why did you agree to present this topic? You know, you're going to embarrass yourself. I even remember one professor, as we were getting into the room and I was going to present, she just whispered, she's from Zimbabwe, she just whispered in my ear, "Mama, Grace." I told her, don't worry. Apparently, I presented, it emerged, it was one of the best papers. And out of that, Open Society sponsored me to go support I think from Africa, it was just me and Henriette. We to go and support the freedom of expression rapporteur, consolidate his position. After that, Open Society still paid for me to go and now do an official course in convergence issues. And I think after that, I was very interested and I put in a lot of effort. I did Diplo courses, I applied for them. So for that 1 year, I think 2012, it was just a learning time on what internet governance is all about. I still make people laugh because in South Africa, somebody asked me about IP address. I really didn't know what an IP address was. And I looked around the room and I wondered who can help me respond to this question. And I just said, actually, I have no answer. I am bringing this back to the meeting. Does anyone want to respond to this? And I got people to respond. So I think at that point, then I realized, yes, I had found a new me.
Hi, Grace. It's a pleasure to learn from you, Tobegile here. So I've actually, been following intently and quite encouraged by what you were sharing with us. I think as we wait for Gbenga to join, it'll be interesting maybe for you to also just share some insights into how also young people can join the space and continue to advocate for digital rights. You've mentioned that you thought about mentorship and things like that. Maybe I see Gbenga joining in, but maybe just a question from me is how can young people, best effectively join the digital, space and also be able to be engaged, learning from your great expertise, of course.
Yeah, one thing I have learned and one thing I always tell young people is this, the industry is quite, large and there are so many topics. So it's impossible to try and it will be impossible to try and understand everything at a go. So one thing is that, do they have an interest? So if they have an interest, then number two, can they define that area of interest so that they learn and they focus on that area? The third thing I always tell her, ask. There are always people willing to help. There are always people willing to support with opportunities. There are always people willing to provide information. And so, what matters actually is that what we need to know is that, internet governance, ICT issues, nobody was born with these issues. And in fact, it's only recently that they started offering such courses at universities. So the rest of us have had to teach ourselves. And so what I tell young people, there's nothing that is rocket science. You just must demonstrate an interest. And once you demonstrate an interest, there are always opportunity. So be bold. If it is Gbenga who you admire and who you think you'd want to do like he does, drop him an email, chat him up on FB, Let him know that you're interested. If Gbenga has no time, I am sure he can lead the young person to you, or maybe just direct the person to me, like Gbenga has been doing. And I keep getting emails. Oh, Gbenga has said this, Gbenga has said that. And I'm thinking, okay, one of these days I'm going to invoice Gbenga. Because one of the things that I do is that I am not one who kills people's dreams. So I get those requests, especially from young people. Get me a job. So I will ask, what sort of a job are you looking for? Oh, I am in ICTs. So I will guide the person and tell them, ICTs are broad. What exactly do you want in ICTs? Because number one, you need an area that you're interested in, because you cannot be a jack of all trades in ICT. So think, and when you think, come back to me. So some have come back to me, and I will tell them, of course, I have no support in that kind of area. But I am always trying to find these opportunities, either, with all these links that we have. It's either our .ke registry, it's all this, the technical community, because I get those requests, especially on technical staff, technical community. So many people have requested me to come onto the show. And of course we agree that when you come into the show, you must be able to offer something. So I think what I have learned is that it is very important to support the young people, because I always think, if I wasn't supported by industry leaders, I would also not have been here. And so I always want to give back to the community. And so young people, I encourage them, reach out, reach out to those you think can mentor you. Ask questions, define an area that you're interested in. When they ask for work and it's voluntary, please volunteer and give your time, because especially like now we are using a lot of, we are online, so sometimes it doesn't require many resources. And then don't let money be your guiding factor. Money is important, yes, but it's not the most important thing. So as a person who is getting into the area, learn fast, the money will follow.
Thank you so much. Over to Gbenga. I see he's ready, and thanks for answering that. And I think I've taken a few nuggets there with me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Grace, thank you so much, and thank you for Bakile. So you've talked about something that we also talked about earlier, which is volunteering. And I would love to, come back to you on that topic of volunteering. I'd like for you to share with us an example of how you volunteered early in the days and how that translated into an opportunity for you and also for the people for the institution where you volunteered.
Okay. I think I've done a lot of volunteer work actually in my life. In fact, the other day I was saying I think I'm now too old to continue volunteering. I need to come up with a model, like they call it the freemium model, where I can only give so much of free of my time, and then the rest people need to start paying. But even my getting into this sector, it was actually on voluntary basis. So when I started, the first time I participated was when Kenya hosted the Kenya Internet, the global Internet Governance Forum in Nairobi. That was the first time I was engaging, I was learning, I was really, really like new into the issues. But I continued volunteering, so there were topics, for example, KICTANet would ask me to moderate on the platform, on our engagement platform, and I took those and I did them so well, because for me, what I was thinking, I think this is a very interesting area and I need to learn more. So I was very good. But you see, out of that volunteering, Gbenga, is when I got this opportunity to engage with the Freedom of Expression rapporteur. In fact, when we went to Stockholm to help the FRAG to consolidate his position, From Africa, it was only me and Henriette. And I felt very, because Henriette is a giant, she was already, a name in this. And I felt very humbled. In fact, one professor from Canada told me, from Africa, it's just the two of you. Africa is a very small, he just laughed and said, Africa must be a very small continent. But I felt there was no money, but I felt, the opportunity. And out of that, my engagement, even like with the Open Society, in fact, that topic that I engaged, they ended up giving KICTANet funding to actually do a study on intermediary liability in Kenya. And so, I became like the expert in that topic. So for me, I was looking, if I had not volunteered, this opportunity would not have been there. And within that, then people in the sector started getting to know my name. They started getting to invite me to meetings. And slowly by slowly, I started getting, to do work. It's research, it's training, it's just speaking. And so it actually translates later into the money. And so for me, even where I am today, I keep saying it's the volunteerism that has paid. And even I just need to point out that at KICTANet, we still don't have salaries. But we have, these days at least, we have projects where then if you work on a project, you get paid on that project. But we don't have salaries. And I think, somebody asked us one time, what motivates you to continue doing the work? And I keep saying, it's the passion. We tell people we eat the passion. But even as we eat that passion, the thing is, we've also gotten very many opportunities, like meeting you, Gbenga. Where would I have met you if I was not in the volunteerism? Huh? At least the edit, I had met him and Wakabi in my previous media work. But where would I have met all these other people that are now my networks, are my connections, if I had not, continued? So for me, I actually enjoy the work. And the fact that there's not a dull moment, that the issues are new, they continue to evolve. So even if some of the things that we have benefited, actually, you can't even quantify them with money, because you become an expert, you understand what is AI. When you speak to people, they're mesmerized and thinking, okay, so how did you learn this? In fact, many of my previous colleagues who are still in media have asked me, how, this internet governance, what is it? It sounds too technical. Are you a techie now? Can you repair, I don't know, the laptop? And I'm like, no, it's just at policy level, but I understand what the issues are. So that volunteerism for me is what has translated into what it is that I do today.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Grace. And I'm not surprised. By the way, it's a pleasure to meet you. So I'm glad you volunteered. To have met you, obviously, met you a long time ago. Now, let me ask you this question about building. So you joined KICTANet. Now you're the convener for KICTANet. And between when you joined and now, you have done a lot of work yourself as a person, KICTANet as an institution, and you have remained relevant. There is no way we're going to talk in Kenya about what you do, or even in the region, without referring to your work and KICTANet's work. Yeah. What helped you with this relevance? Don't forget, within the same period, some people have moved from ICT for development to HIV and AIDS to climate change to gender, and are now back in ICT for development. What was the staying power for you, and what can we learn from that?
Wow. I think I will say one of the things I'll say is that the passion has continued to drive the work that we do at KICTANet. But at an individual level, I think I must say I have stayed in the game. And I think that's very important because, like you say, there are people coming, there are people going out. There are issues coming, there, they are there, and they continue to mutate. I will say, I think what has guided me is staying in the game, because sometimes the work we do can also be very challenging, especially when it comes to advocacy. And say the government or the businesses dismissing us as noisemakers. But that has not deterred us from doing what it is that we believe in. So yes, we have values. And I think one of the things I keep telling guys at KICTANet, and how in times when I'm motivating them and when we've had challenges, one of the things I tell people is that we must stay in the game. Whatever we have decided to do is our show, so the show must go on. And what defines us is the work. And I go back to the Bible, I think it's Matthew, I forget the exact whatever, that they shall be known by their works. So what is that will define us? And we have gone on, we've gone on, and people have seen the work that we do, like you say, Gbenga, and they now define us by the work. And they realize that despite criticism, because there has been a lot of criticism, especially that labeling us civil society noise, if we had listened, we would have left the show. But we have stayed on the game, and we continue to drive the show because it belongs to us. And number 3, let people know us by the work that we do. I don't know if
their fruits, we know them.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I leave Paradigm Initiative in a few years, I may just church since since I was able to quote the scripture that you were talking about just now. Maybe outside the church, something that people like you will send members so that we can have a lot of tithes and offering. Anyway, this is interesting. So, Grace, I wanted to touch on one other area. I know that when you look at things now, it's a bit different. In the tech space, in digital rights. In fact, most of the people that I know who are the leaders in the sector are women. Right, and in fact, when it still have, I saw
Gbenga,
an event just yesterday. There are 8 people on.
I lost you.
Yes.
I think there's something wrong with the internet. Can you take it back from where you were saying that leaders are women?
Oh, yes. I was saying that now we see a lot of the women that I work with, a lot of the leaders that I work with in the digital sector, not just in Africa, across the world, but it wasn't always like this. And I was given the example of a flyer that I saw for an event yesterday. There are 8 people on the flyer, all men. Now, as a leader in this sector, what do you think we need to do better to have, and I'm not just speaking gender now, I'm speaking of every group that is sort of marginalized by default, or that people say things like, oh, give me an example of someone in that group that can join the panel, or things like that. How do you think we're doing as a digital rights community in Africa in terms of diversity and inclusion, and how can we do better?
Interesting question there, Gbenga, because this is a question we always ask ourselves, especially when we have a meeting or when we are running the Kenya Internet Governance Forum. So what guides us, number 1, is multi-stakeholderism. That term, because we really push for it even when we have government meetings. And we always say we cannot be telling government or the business sector about yet we can't do it ourselves. So one of the things I must say, Gbenga, is that we must be deliberate about being inclusive. And when we mean that, is that then we become intentional. So if it is a meeting, I will tell you like what we do during our meetings. So there's a panel. Number one, who are the stakeholders? So we will have civil society, government, business, maybe academia, or the techie. So we divide, we are intentional in all our engagements, especially those that have to do with internet governance must have those stakeholders represented. Then we go now to individuals. If it is government, government has many stakeholders. Who are we inviting for this? So we will list 2 or 3 names. We will go to business, we will list 2 or 3 names. We'll go to civil society, we list 2 or 3 names. Then now we come into selecting and we will say, this, we have so many men or we have so many women. How do we balance this? And then we will see like some sessions, you will realize, there are too many women. So you will say, for this one, please, when we write to request for the speaker, let's also give the name of the person we want, so that then you're bringing in a balance. And I must say, we have really tried doing that. There was only one time I think we had a session, and the first session we had men, and we had really tried to bring women on board, but they had all declined on that topic. And so we really did not have a choice. But we always try, even including, like people with disabilities, we have that. And even like last year, for the first time during the Kenya IGF, we actually had a sign language interpreter during the session. So the thing I would say is that we must be deliberate, we must be intentional. It just doesn't happen. People must put in effort and make sure that it happens. And then encourage women, especially women, because you'll invite women and they'll say, oh, I'm not comfortable in that. I always tell people it won't bite. There is no harm. There must be a first time. There must be a beginning. Come. And I always tell, especially like people in KICTANet, if they don't have confidence in, say, presenting, I will tell them, and this was also done to me, I will tell them, look out for where I am sitting in the room. And when you present, raise your hand, raise your face like this. Look at where I am. And I'll be letting you know whether you are doing the right thing. So, you are prompting. So you are saying thumbs up and you're saying volume, you're doing this. You are nodding, so that then people become confident. And after that, you really give them feedback and tell them that, this is the first time, you can do it. It's not rocket science. You can do it. And people don't bite.
It doesn't bite. People don't bite. I love that. So Grace, we're nearing the end of our conversation. And like I told you, we will do this again. Yes. In fact, I will plead with my colleagues at Paradigm Initiative, if it's possible, for us to make this a main session that we'll continue to do at DRIF. And we don't even have to wait until DRIF, so that leaders within the sector are able to share their thoughts on issues, but also so that we can ask them questions. I don't see any particular question right now, so I want to take you to our mock Digital Rights in Africa Awards. And I have 2 questions for you. Before I ask you about, to vote for the best or the worst leader on the continent in terms of digital rights, or countries in terms of the landscape for digital rights, and I will tally the votes at the end. Tell us a bit about what is your summation? What is your view of 2020 and digital rights in Africa? How would you describe what happened in 2020 as far as digital rights is concerned on the continent?
I think COVID brought in a challenge for us, but I don't necessarily look at it as a challenge because so many of us anyway have been working online. But I think COVID actually has been a contributor in people embracing digital transformation, because now you have so many people utilizing the online platforms for school, for very serious meetings, including presidents. And so I think what has happened is that 2020 allowed the sector to actually demonstrate to the world what it's all about. We used to tell people that at KICTANet we are a virtual organization, and they did not even understand. There were even donors who refused to fund us because they were asking if we ran away with their money, where are they going to find us? And one of the questions I always ask, it may sound rude, but is it the office that does the work, or it's people? And anyway, we can be traced if anyone wants to trace us. But most important is that we will not misuse the donors' funds. So for me, 2020 offered the digital rights organizations an opportunity to demonstrate the importance of the internet and why it must be considered now as a human rights. Actually, it's become necessary. It's become like part of, on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's actually on the lower level. It's on the on the first level, where we talk about food and water and what is necessary. The internet is actually a necessity, and it's a human right now. So it's an opportunity for us to agitate for the internet to be considered and to be taken on board as a human right. And we don't need to really argue and come up with papers trying to justify. We have practical examples.
You're right. Many of the arguments we used to make are no longer necessary. If there's no internet, students can't study as much as they should do. You can't even social distance. If there is a wave that you're dealing with, social distance, people can be at home and work and keep the economy going. Okay, we have now come to that point where you are judge and jury.
I think is Wakabi still, allow me, Gbenga, is Wakabi still in the call?
He's still on the call, and he has done what I'm asking you to do now.
Yes, because I just want to recognize, and I have just remembered, I've never told Wakabi this, but I think I need to tell him it. He might feel a bit uncomfortable, but he needs to know that one of my knowing Wakabi, because I got to know Wakabi long time ago when we were still journalists, and he did give a reference, and Open Society Southern Africa gave me a consultancy to do a book on broadcasting. So it was my first book. I have a book to my name, and I got some very good money. So Wakabi, thank you very much for that reference.
Thank you. Thank you. Leaders helping leaders. And this is why we're here. I look forward to more revelations as we continue this conversation with leaders. And I want you to now tell us which country or president or prime minister holds the worst record in terms of digital rights violations for 2020, and which country would you say the leader has the best record for respecting digital rights?
The best, you know where it goes. Do I need to say?
Yes, you have to.
Kenya.
Kenya, best.
The worst, for me, I think it was Ethiopia.
Interesting. Ethiopia is coming up a lot.
Yeah.
But, all right. Thank you very much, Grace.